Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of This Week in Privacy. This is episode 20 of our weekly series where we cover the latest updates with what we're working on within the Privacy Guides community and this week's top stories in the data privacy and cybersecurity space. Today I'm joined again by our video producer, Jordan. How are you doing today, Jordan?
I'm doing okay. I might sound a bit scratchy today, though. I've got a bit of a cold, but hanging in there and really excited to dive into some privacy news this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, for people who don't know who we are, Privacy Guides is a nonprofit which researches and shares privacy-related information. We have a community on our forum and Matrix where people can ask questions and get advice about staying private online and preserving their digital rights. So for how these shows work typically, before we dive in, I'll give you a quick rundown. We're going to start by covering site updates, what we're working on at Privacy Guides behind the scenes, and then we will move on to discussing some of the top stories that we've seen in the news in this space. We have a lot of good stories today. We're going to be talking about a TikTok deal that's coming up in the US. We're going to be talking about some improvements to Firefox, especially on Android. We're going to be talking about a story about Microsoft cutting cloud services to the Israeli military, and another story that talks about a bit more about the UK's kind of descent into whatever dystopia they're building with now a mandatory ID thing. So a lot of interesting stuff that we'll be talking about. We'll also talk about some other posts that we've seen in our community and on our forum, and we will answer any questions that you might have. If you have a question for us, please leave a comment in the forum thread for this stream or in the YouTube chat. We open up the forum thread a few days early every week, so we have some questions from our community prepared there, but there's always time to get it in before we get to the Q&A section. So yeah, that kind of covers the show. Let's kick it off with what we've been doing, and I'll hand it over to Jordan to talk about a bit of what they've been doing on the video production side of things here.
Thanks, Jonah. Yeah, so this week has kind of been finishing out a project that we've been working on for quite a while now, and that's the quantum computing video. So that's sort of focusing on some aspects about how our encryption has the ability to be broken by quantum computers at some point. It's definitely a topic that a lot of people in our community have wondered about, and we've been seeing like quite a few questions about people saying like, is this encryption safe against quantum computers? Is it possible to be broken at some point? And that's sort of the answer to that question. So we kind of dive into what algorithms are actually um, possible to be broken by quantum computers. And I'm not going to spoil like the whole video, but you'll have to watch the video when it comes out very shortly. And yeah, so that's sort of what we're thinking about that. And we're also working on another project about data brokers. So we brought someone in who's like an expert in the industry and, trying to create something that makes people a bit more aware about what's happening with that in the US, specifically because it is a pretty huge problem for a lot of reasons. And we kind of want to spread some awareness around that topic. So that's another project that you should look out for very, very soon. But yeah, that's what I've been working on this week.
Sweet. That those both sound very exciting. I'm super excited for that quantum computing video because I think it comes up a lot, I think, with encryption in more and more companies that are pushing this like post-quantum security stuff. And people want to know like what the actual risk is. And I think uh getting that covered will be super cool. So that's very exciting. Um, I'll talk about a bit about what other people are working on here. As far as the website goes, we recently, just yesterday, released a new version of the site with the latest recommendations and PRs from the volunteer community. A lot of smaller changes. We added a new file management page for self-hosted file management recommendations. We updated some of our recommendations for Mac OS now that Mac OS 26 is out. So if you did update your computer and you have a Mac, you can check that out just to make sure you're kind of following the general baseline recommendations that we have. A few articles came out. I actually published an article on MTE and Apple's new memory integrity enforcement feature that's on the A19 chip, so in the iPhone 17 and iPhone Air. I think it's a really cool feature that I'm super excited about, and I've got a lot of good feedback about that article. I think that it really covers the topic in a way that I haven't really seen a lot of people explaining to like people who don't really know what it is. If you haven't heard of this feature or if you don't know why it matters to you, because this memory safety stuff is it's talked about a lot in cybersecurity, but it's kind of complicated, especially if you're not a developer. I hope that my article is helpful to you, and if you have any questions, definitely ask on our forum. But I think it's a good overview, and that came out. Um, Otherwise, yeah, mostly minor changes. You can check our changelog for details, but just a lot of continual maintenance going on behind the scenes to make sure all the recommendations on our website are as good as they can be. Um, Otherwise, our other team members, our staff writer, has been working on a few articles for a while, and we're also working on some improvements for that membership feature that we talked a bit about last week and recently launched this month. We want to have as many like cool benefits that help people with their privacy and learn more about all this stuff for our members as possible. So if you do support us, you can still support us at a discounted monthly rate if you want to get in early on our website. You can sign up for a membership. All of that stuff really helps. Us make sure that this project is sustainable and that we can continue paying people like Jordan and our writer M and all of our other team members and guest contributors for all of their great work because yeah, it's we've been doing just so much cool stuff this month, and I hope that all of you are seeing the benefits of that as well, and you're getting more value about this from the stuff that we're putting out. And we want to make sure that we can continue that going forward. So that's kind of the pitch for the membership. If anyone is interested in supporting, we would really appreciate your donation. Um, with all of that said, I think we can move on from Privacy Guides updates to a bit more news topics. Let's start out with our main story here. Jordan, do you want to introduce this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just hop on over to this. Yeah, so kind of a big story this week. Oracle um might have a controlling stake in TikTok. So basically if you haven't been following the whole thing, um, there's been sort of a question about TikTok's ownership because of the parent company ByteDance being Chinese owned. And I guess the United States doesn't like that there's a foreign competitor operating within their borders. So this is kind of an update to that story, and let me just quote the key facts from this Forbes article by Ty Roosh. So here we go. Oracle, Silver Lake, and Andreessen Horowitz are among US investors who will hold an estimated 80% stake in a new US company that will operate TikTok, with Chinese shareholders owning the remaining shares, Wall Street Journal reported. So there's also like the question of like where the user data will be stored, and they did also answer that in this article. Oracle will control user data at its facilities in Texas under the new company, whose board will primarily consist of Americans and one member designated by the US government. So I think this has been kind of like an ongoing thing about like Americans' data being stored overseas. And I think there's some concern that the data being stored about Americans could be quite sensitive, I guess, and the US government doesn't want a foreign country to have access to that. So that's sort of the reason why this is happening. But do you have anything to add on this, Jonah?
It's a really strange story in my opinion, and I don't really know. I wonder like what this is going to look like for Americans on TikTok. Are they going to get a segregated app that's specific to the American market, or will they continue to like interoperate with um the global TikTok app and post from people from other countries? I don't really see like if there is that interoperability, it doesn't make a lot of sense. as far as how this will really make a difference in terms of getting Americans' data out there, because Americans' posts would still be accessible worldwide and vice versa. And the TikTok algorithm, I think, can't easily be controlled. On the other hand, like if we do see more segregation between American and Chinese TikTok apps, for example, we're getting into a place where that's a huge freedom of speech and freedom of access to information issue. For better or for worse, so many people are getting their information and news from TikTok these days, and I don't you know, I think it is not a great thing to have a foreign country from the perspective of the US, to have China like control what your citizens are seeing on the news, which is kind of the reality right now. And so it's not great. And I can see why America would want to change that. But swapping it out to having like the American government decide what Americans are seeing on the news and around the world isn't a great situation either. So it's definitely there's still a lot of questions. It seems more like a business play to kind of enrich these American companies like Oracle, in this case, to kind of uh, you know, be able to sell these resources like all of the storage and compute in Texas as opposed to offshore data centers. I don't really see the value of this change for the American people right now. It seems to be kind of just a smokescreen to kind of capture some of this business basically, and I don't know if it'll have um, at least a huge positive effect in how Americans use TikTok. Um, yeah, I think that's the main thing. There's a lot of like stuff to be concerned about because we see Larry Ellison with Oracle uh make concerning statements about mass surveillance and privacy in the past. They do a lot of work kind of supporting and empowering AI-powered surveillance systems and massive databases of people's information. I think a lot of people in the software industry or developers are probably familiar with Oracle in general and their kind of not so great reputation when it comes to pretty much anything that they do. So it's not a super exciting choice in who's going to take over these operations in the US either. Uh, so yeah, I think it's just a lot of problems and a lot of open questions that remain for me. It's a tricky problem, all this TikTok stuff.
Yeah, I think this is also kind of an issue with like the US is becoming sort of like a monopoly on the internet, basically. Like a lot of these social media companies, like that everyone uses, even outside of the US, basically every single like tech company is US owned, which is, I would say, I don't know, slightly problematic. That everything is basically controlled by a single country. Especially for people outside the US. I mean, people in the US, maybe it doesn't really matter to you that much, but that is a concern that I had. Um, just another app becoming, you know, controlled by the US. I don't know if this is going to apply to other countries because it's kind of unclear how this would actually work. And as far as I know, just like looking at the article, this like just because like the US president has said that this deal is approved doesn't mean that like um the uh the Chinese government or like I'm not sure who decides on the other end. I'm assuming it might be like ByteDance or the Chinese government, I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure they also have to agree to this too. So, I mean, this isn't like it's completely set and done. But I think it's interesting to see what this will actually be because, as far as I'm aware, this is just sort of speculation. Like, we don't really know if this is actually going to go through and if it's going to, I don't know, affect the entire world. But I think a lot of times people will say things like, you know, TikTok is spying on people and like, you know, mishandling user data. And then the same US company will do like the same thing. And it's like, hello? Are we not like seeing that this is the same thing? Like it's just it seems very like geopolitical um
Yeah.
in that people are trying to make it out as like, you know, this terrible thing going on. Well, I don't know. I think there's the US tech companies are doing the same, if not worse. Well, I don't know if not worse, but definitely a similar idea um, to what TikTok's doing. It's just the ownership is different. But yeah, I think it goes without saying, like these platforms are not going to be great for your privacy, and they're collecting information about you. So um, I don't think this is going to affect anyone in our audience per se, but I think this is just an interesting story about like, I guess the US's like control over media, I guess. Because I do think it is a bit worrying that there is such a like stranglehold over like internet infrastructure that is all based in the US, which hasn't been a problem yet, but it could be a problem at some point. So it's definitely interesting to think about.
Yeah, this is definitely like it's become a recurring theme of this show, I think, the government kind of stepping into all of these tech problems in industries where it might not even be necessary. I didn't catch that detail, that it wasn't totally confirmed with China yet. So I did see that this article notes that Trump said he would speak with the Chinese president on Friday, which is today, to confirm the deal's framework. So I guess we will find out shortly whether or not that goes through. But yeah, I guess it isn't final.
And yeah,
With that out of the way, oh sorry, do you want to add
I
one
was
more
gonna
thing?
say, like, it does seem like every single time, like, this like sale is like been an ongoing thing that's like literally keeps getting
Yeah,
pushed back and back. Like it's a bit of a recurring like thing. So I wouldn't say that this is like said and done right now. I think it's very up in the air whether this is actually gonna happen. So just putting that out there.
absolutely. I mean, I think this was supposed to happen in like last December, I believe, and they kept extending the deadline out and out. So maybe we'll see another deadline extension as they continue to talk about it. The government loves to do that.
The next story is about Microsoft cutting its cloud services to Israeli military unit over Palestinian surveillance. So I feel like we've kind of been seeing a lot of people like protesting Microsoft's involvement with military for quite a while. I remember there was like a couple of employees who were concerned about this, who were fired for speaking out about it. And it looks like we actually know for sure that this was actually happening. So that's definitely quite interesting. And it looks like Microsoft has responded. So let's quote from the article here. Um, Microsoft has cut off the Israel Ministry of Defense's access to some of its tech and services after an internal investigation found the organization appeared to be using its tech to store surveillance on phone calls made by Palestinians. The tech giant announced on Thursday that it made the decision to cease and disable certain subscriptions from the Israeli military. This affects subscriptions to Azure, sorry, Azure cloud storage and certain AI activities and services. So we do not provide technology to facilitate mass surveillance of civilians. And I think that there could have definitely been a lot more investigation from Microsoft when a lot of people were bringing up this concern about like Microsoft's cloud services being used to surveil people. Because I feel like it's kind of been an ongoing thing where people were accusing Microsoft of doing this, and they definitely were like saying that they were not aware of any use cases where this was being done, but it sounds like they've eventually had to do an internal investigation and um, found that their services were being used to surveil people, and in this case, it was Palestinians. So it was, according to this article, the investigation was sparked by a story in The Guardian that reported that Unit 8200, the elite Israel military intelligence unit, was using their cloud storage to house data on phone calls obtained through the surveillance of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. So, yeah, that's pretty horrible stuff. Monitoring people and recording their phone calls. This is definitely like activity that I think um, we're definitely opposed to, especially it doesn't really matter who's being surveilled in this case. I think that like recording people's phone numbers, phone calls, especially when they didn't actually when they've kind of been denying this has been going on for a while now. It's kind of disappointing to see that it took this long. So for Microsoft to actually acknowledge that this was going on, because I feel like this has sort of been an ongoing issue that keep people have been bringing up about Microsoft, and especially the stuff going on right now. So it's good to see that they actually acknowledged that it was happening, and they've cut their services to that uh, thing. And I think here's another quote from the article: Microsoft has been under fire from both employees and outsiders for its involvement with Israel over the past year. Protests regarding Microsoft's relationship with Israel broke out at the company's 50th anniversary celebration in April. Several employees staged a sit in, forcing a lockdown. So, yeah, a lot of, like I was saying before, they've fired a couple of employees for their activism related to Microsoft's contracts with Israel because they had similar concerns about their infrastructure being used for surveillance and other military activities. So, um,
Yeah, I had seen this story. Kevin sent it to me earlier this morning. It's an interesting one because it's interesting to see where companies are drawing the lines, especially when we see it in real life with conflicts like this, or in the Ukraine, we've seen different responses from different companies. Um, a lot of people would argue that like, well, they don't want to provide surveillance services to militaries, or any sort of mass surveillance technologies that impacts regular civilians. That's the type of stuff that all of these big tech companies like Microsoft are doing all the time when it comes to regular civilians in countries all over the world. The only difference is like the military application here. So it doesn't seem to be a stance against mass surveillance in general, just this specific use case. And obviously this is a very extreme use case. And it's good to pull out and to not support operations like this because it's not the type of thing that should be deployed against civilians or people in any circumstance, much less like a military setting where people are relying on unreliable AI services from all these different tech companies to to make military decisions. It doesn't AI doesn't have a place in the chain of command, or it definitely shouldn't, even though some military leaders in countries all over the world, not just Israel, are trying to do, which I think is really unfortunate. So anything to kind of reduce our reliance and kind of shifting accountability to AI, I think is a good thing. The military generally embraces this AI tech just to be less accountable for their actions for the most part, yeah, in from my perspective. So, uh, I think it's a good thing overall, but it's a really interesting story to see coming from Microsoft because, um, surveillance is is a lot of what they do. So, yeah.
yeah, I think like the biggest thing about this is just that their technology is being used to like do mass surveillance on civilians. Um, I think, yeah, that's obviously wrong in every aspect. So it is good to see that at least there is some accountability of Microsoft. It feels like they really are having a lot of L's recently. Their Windows 10 saga is still continuing, and they're dropping support for that. And I don't think a lot of people are upgrading to Windows 11 still. So yeah, they're definitely struggling a little bit. But it seems like they're sort of pivoting away from like their traditional stuff to more of this like AI, becoming an AI company. Um, but yeah, I think this is definitely an interesting story. But yeah, I don't really have much more to add on it.
Well, I think we'll move on to our next story then. This is reported by the BBC. Their headline is Starmer to announce plans for digital ID scheme. Sir Keir Starmer is expected to announce plans for a compulsory UK-wide digital ID scheme in a speech on Friday. This was reported yesterday, so that'd be today. The Prime Minister believes it would help crack down on illegal working and modernize the state, according to senior figures in government. Um, and so basically, this is something that's being pushed forward by the Labour Party in the EU to tackle illegal immigration. And obviously, this digital ID stuff really ties into the age verification stuff that we've been seeing from the UK. And what we've been saying for a while is mainly implemented as a way to kind of control and censor the information that UK citizens are seeing more so than like protecting the children or anything like that. When it comes to illegal immigration and working, uh, residency checks right now are currently being done through physical ID cards, but the UK government wants to create a national database of UK residents and citizens. Um, Watchdog organizations like Big Brother Watch have noted that this poses significant privacy issues, and I would agree because requiring a digital ID for all of this stuff is it really ties your actions. It ties yourself to it leaves a trail basically of everything that you're doing, and uh, it isn't the place of the government to be able to control that stuff in general. Obviously, in the UK, it's a bit of a different situation, but we do see this stuff being pushed for all around the world right now, where you'll kind of be basically required to identify your stuff at all sorts of different junctions. Like, yesterday, it was to access like pornographic material in the UK, for example, which they then expanded to legitimate services like Wikipedia. Today they're saying, you need to have all of this to get a job or to do other stuff. And then tomorrow, who knows? You're building they're they're just building the foundation for this framework to really require this in every conceivable way. And it's really going to hamper the ability to become anonymous or publish things anonymously or access information that you might not want tied to yourself, and that's really the big problem at the end of the day. Um, I think it's really important that people are able to access knowledge and information, without fear of retribution because that knowledge is super important for humanity as a whole to be able to share freely. Um, so yeah, it's very problematic. What are your thoughts on this digital ID scheme?
It reminds me of that comic. I don't know if anyone's seen it. I might bring it up in a second, but it's like that comic where there's this guy getting a gift and he's like, "How would you like that wrapped?" And it's like terrorism, protecting children. I feel like there's a new one. It's like illegal immigration. That's like another thing, that like governments are using to like sort of push through these things that I feel like most people probably would find pretty reprehensible in a lot of cases. And that's like the new wrapping that I guess governments are using to normalize this surveillance. And yeah, I agree with everything you said. Like this is a terrible move, especially the fact that it's compulsory is probably the biggest thing. Because in Australia we do have a digital ID system. However, it's not required. It's optional if you want to. And I think that's probably like the best middle ground. I mean, obviously we shouldn't. I still have issues with digital ID, but I think if it's an optional thing that certain people can opt in to, then I feel like that's a safer middle ground than forcing everybody to do this. I think the biggest thing is just if once you make it compulsory, you're basically requiring every citizen to like upload their ID and confirm their identity. So that's a lot of information that you're digitizing, and a lot of information that you're storing in a centralized like manner. And that's pretty concerning stuff. So
And it's a
that's
security risk as well. I mean, like we've seen India has a digital ID system, for example, and they have a national database. And we've seen that leaked, for example, and all this information is out there. Like you're creating a gigantic target, the UK government is, to have all of this information in a single place. Like that attracts hackers and people who want to commit identity theft. So much like what we've been saying about age verification this whole time, all of this centralization of IDs and all of this like normalization of sharing sensitive personal information on the internet, like images of your ID and other personal identifying information, that will lead to more identity theft, more cyber attacks. It places UK citizens in danger, which I think is very concerning. Something that we did note here, a petition against this plan has been released. They got 500,000 signatures already and counting. I don't know. We can add a link to this petition, but you should definitely, if you're in the UK, you can sign it and make sure that people know that you're against it because all of this ID stuff is harmful to privacy, it's harmful to civil liberties, it's harmful to equality because, there's a variety of reasons that it's easier or harder for certain people to comply with this or, get a digital ID, that are very tricky to solve. There's a lot of problems, I think, in society in general. I think a lot of people agree at this point that there's a lot going on, but the government is taking all of these problems and using it as an opportunity to overreach and to kind of control what you do as a solution to the problems that they're seeing instead of trying to like address the fundamental root causes. I think that, in the UK, if they're actually concerned about illegal immigration or workers, I think that there are other solutions to this that don't involve you know, this kind of overreach when it comes to privacy and kind of like trying to micromanage how everyone identifies themselves as opposed to addressing like the root causes of these problems that are actually leading to this in the first place.
Yeah, um, I think this is just like another I feel like the UK is like the staging ground for like all the worst possible laws to be passed in. Like what is going on over there? Like it seriously seems like the worst possible like laws always get passed in the UK, which is really unfortunate for people that live there. And um this just so we're clear about this though, this is like not currently in effect, like they haven't actually pushed this through yet, but it's looking like there's a plan to do it, and it seems a lot of people are interested in this going through. I know I did want to talk about this a little bit, but I think when we talk to people about this, I think it's worth bringing this up to people, especially if you live in the UK, like, bring this up to people and let them know why this is a problem because I think a lot of people, when you wrap it, like I said at the start, when you wrap this in some like sort of, excuse like, oh, it's about protecting children, oh, it's about, terrorism, protecting us from terrorism, it's about, illegal immigration, people are a lot more like pliable. But I think we should probably think about this separately from the benefits of, or like the political reason why this is being pushed. We should think about this separately and try and think about how this will affect people because, like Jonah said, this can have wide-reaching consequences for people. So sometimes it takes talking to people about this more than once um, to get people to change their mind on something, and I think it's kind of frustrating that a lot of media outlets, especially like we're seeing with the BBC, they seem to be very, I don't know, indifferent to this. They don't seem to be featuring the thoughts of uh the privacy advocates. I know they do mention here that the Reform UK party, I think that's like one of the only parties that's against this, but they are uh a little bit problematic, let's just say. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating that that's the only real opposition, and a lot of people will probably discount that and be like, oh, they're a bit of a wild group of people, so we can't really trust what they have to say. But I think there's a lot of genuine people who have genuine criticisms of this, who aren't in it for like a political reason, like the Reform UK party is. Of course, they're going to oppose anything that's going on. It makes them look better. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating that they're like the forefront of the voice for this opposition. But I think it's important to try and separate it from like the political stuff and try and get people to think about it more objectively.
Absolutely. The UK seems like a crazy place, but I totally agree that I think a big problem with a lot of these policies and a lot of politics in general is that politicians have become really good at convincing people that their solution that they're proposing is the only possible solution to the problems that they're addressing. And they're like, well, if you don't like this solution, then you must be in favor of the problem, right? Which isn't the case. I think we can always take a step back, ignore the problem that's being addressed for a second and look at what the solution will do, and then go back to the problem and maybe think about like, oh, are there other solutions, like you were saying, that don't have all of these concerns? And I think that in most of these cases we can find them, but these governments are just so motivated to like increase their level of control because it's better for them and people need to watch for that.
Yeah, definitely. I guess that kind of covers like a lot of the news topics. As always, like this will be included in the newsletter that we release every time we do a live show here. So if you want to check out those stories, you can sign up for that, and you'll get all these stories straight to your inbox. But yeah, do you want to move into the Q&A section of the stream?
Yeah, absolutely. um and I see YouTube has a Q&A feature now that I've never seen before,
Oh,
so I'll
interesting.
start that and we'll see what it looks like, and then in the meantime I will go and look at our forum thread here. One second. I did notice a couple questions. Uh, this first one comes from a member of ours. Thank you for supporting the channel. Your username is basically a lot of letters, so I'm not going to try to pronounce. But yeah, but your question was cases of IMSI catcher attacks using fake base stations have recently been reported in Japan, Thailand, South Korea, and other countries. Is there any way for ordinary consumers to prepare for this? And is the difficulty level low for crackers to implement this attack? This is a great question. A lot of these attacks, they take advantage of the fact that your phone will connect to much less secure 2G and 3G networks. And depending on the phone that you have, you can actually disable 2G or 3G entirely in your settings. I know that this is something that gets enabled in lockdown mode on iOS, for example. I believe it's in cellular settings on Android on some devices, but it really depends on what your device supports. So you'd have to look into that specifically. If you are only using LTE and 5G, the attack is significantly harder to do. I do believe there are reports that there are some newer, more modern equipment that that like law enforcement might have access to that can impersonate some of these LTE towers. But as far as I know, there are no public reports of that or any public documentation on how that works. So it's kind of a theoretical capability that we unfortunately don't know much about. At a certain point, it's very hard to defend against some of this stuff. But disabling 2G and 3G is a huge step towards reducing your risk. So if you can do that, that would be the first thing I would look into. Otherwise, the only real potential solutions I've seen come from some phone manufacturers where they can kind of randomize this. There used to be a carrier called Invisive that would do this. There is one now that I have not tested and can't tell you anything about because I've never used it. But I've seen people talk about Cape, and I know that they've partnered with Proton. And I don't believe their current plan by default offers this, but they have a higher level plan where you can get a custom phone that randomizes this. And so that could help protect against this. But that is kind of advanced stuff. Um, that it probably I wouldn't say is necessary for people. And we haven't used Cape at all, anyone on our team. I haven't got a chance to use it. So, uh, how effective it is and whether it's actually worth it or not, I can't really say for sure. It's just something to look into. Um, yeah, the main thing would just be to find a phone that allows you to disable 2G and 3G because I think that that's going to block the the vast majority of this for ordinary consumers.
Yeah, so actually just an extra thing to add there. So that's for protecting against like a stingray, right? But
Yeah.
is an IMSI catcher the same thing? Because as far as I was aware, IMSI catcher isn't that the whole point of that to like capture where a bunch of devices are? Isn't that the whole point of it, or am I thinking wrong?
So those MZ catchers, they do the same thing. They're basically like operating as men in the middle of text and impersonating mobile towers. So it like a stingray is one, for example. They that is their purpose. Um, and you can only capture that data if you pretend to be a tower and that data is being sent unencrypted. So like I was saying, 3G offers some protection against this, but LTE is even better and 5G is even better at like the initial handshake where that information would be shared. You can't make it in the first place with a fake tower generally. A lot of the times, the best attack that people have if you're running a Stingray, for example, is they can kind of force a downgrade from LTE to 2G, and your phone will connect to that, and that's how they get this information. Um, but uh, but so yeah, disabling 2G would be the main defense against that. But yeah, it also depends on your country. And like and your carrier and what encryption they implement. Because like if your carrier doesn't have encrypted phone data traffic in the first place, then a stingray might not even be necessary because it's being sent in plain text. I don't really know the specifics of like how that is happening in Asian countries like the ones that you mentioned, but in general, yeah, this attack would be uh, reduced by disabling 2G.
Yeah, and also like an extra thing to add there. I'm fairly certain that like lockdown mode on iPhones and also advanced protection on Android devices both have like as soon as you enable that, it disables 2G completely, like it won't connect to any 2G towers. Um, and I think especially in Asia, there's a lot more reliance on older tower architecture like 2G and 3G. Whereas at least I'm talking about like the US and Australia and like these sort of countries, we don't really use 3G anymore. So like I guess it would depend if you do rely on that, then you might end up having to enable that sometimes. But I think a lot of times these sort of like IMSI catches are used at like pretty large events, political events and sort of things like that. So it may end up being that you only enable it at that time. But it depends. I think you should definitely look into uh, look into that because it might be a factor whether you can enable it all the time or not. Um, but yeah. Um, I'm seeing some other questions here on the forum about I guess we're talking about the main story in this episode was about like TikTok data being possibly moved to the US and being accessible to uh, American companies. And at least I know we talked about it a bit, but Oracle has got like an absolutely awful track record when it comes to like privacy. And there was a couple people in the forum who were saying, I don't even have a TikTok account, and that's good. I think, yeah, if you can avoid it, that's definitely a good thing. But there was someone here who said there's no good TikTok alternatives. Is it just me, or are more than half of proxy talk public instances not working? I would actually try Stick Talk. Stick Talk. So
That's
that's
exactly what I was gonna bring up too.
yeah, Stick Talk is. has been working for me. Like if someone sends me a TikTok link, let me just try and find what that's. You can talk about it a bit, but I just want to get up the link here.
Yeah, TikTok is the one that I've seen shared the most about. I think it's a good tool. If Proxy Talk isn't working, you should definitely check that out. Um, and while Jordan's bringing that up, I'll answer like the other part of your question. Error work on the forum asked, what info do we have on loops and goldfish? Loops.video, they say they'll be open source out of beta. I haven't heard of Goldfish Social, and since it has no recent activity, I'm not sure if it'll show up, but I have looked into loops.video a bit recently. I it's not my favorite platform because I mean it's not federated or open source yet, so I think that's a big part of the problem. We just haven't seen whether this ecosystem will really exist. It's basically a centralized platform for now. It's by the PixelFed people as well, which PixelFed is not my favorite personally to self-host in general. I think it's very challenging compared to Mastodon and other federated services. So I think that also has a centralizing effect that I think we'll see with loops. And so personally, I'm not super excited about it, but we'll never know. It could definitely be better soon, but I want to see it improve a bit before I would recommend or start using it personally.
Yeah, so
Um,
I brought up the TikTok thing. That's by Privacy Safe, which is run by like Sean O'Brien, who's got a pretty big name in the privacy community. So I think it's definitely worth like checking that out. Um, it's not going to be the same experience as using TikTok. Obviously, there's no like scrolling capabilities or anything like that. But if someone that you know is like sending you TikToks and you want to still be able to watch them and not get tracked by TikTok, then definitely check it out. That's sticktok.com, sticktok.com. So definitely check that out if you want to watch some TikToks, but also not get tracked.
yeah, and if you get sent a TikTok video as well, like by somebody, you can replace TikTok.com in that link with sticktalk.com, and that will bring you to that video too. So it's just an easy way to access, especially I think links sent to you by other people. That's the only reason I would use it personally. But yeah.
Yeah, and I would probably try and avoid the proxy talk ones, um, just because they're pretty unreliable and they're very, very like it's a lot of the case with like Invidious and a lot of these like proxying services. The quality is somewhat, you know, up and down. And as far as I'm aware, like Proxy Talk was the development for that stopped, the person who was developing that. So I'm not entirely sure what happened with that. Maybe there's someone else working on it. It feels like this kind of happens quite a bit. Like we saw like the Knitter developer kind of stopped working on it because it kept getting blocked, and then they started working on it again, and now it's working again. It's like it's pretty variable when it comes to these like proxying services. But as far as I'm aware, and from my testing, like TikTok has been working fine. So that's probably a way to do it for now. It's possible TikTok could block that at any point though. So that's something to be aware of.
Yeah, it's always kind of a cat and mouse game, I think, with any of these front ends, which makes them kind of hard to recommend. I think we'll have to take a look at our front end recommendations again and see if we can improve them. But for now, that would be what I check out. I saw Air Work on the forum also left a blog post about Loop's video later on and about some terms of service issues that somebody else had with it. Um, I mean about loops. Did I say that earlier? About loops, terms of service issues. Um I I think that those are concerns to have with it, and I don't think it's like totally ready to replace TikTok yet. But hopefully, I mean, we definitely saw like when Twitter was going through all sorts of crazy stuff when it was originally purchased. That led to a lot of people switching to Mastodon, and it led to a lot of really quick developments with Mastodon to improve the platform and make it better. And I think that that could be a case that we see here with loops, maybe an influx of TikTok users and especially people supporting it, could lead to it being improved pretty quickly and more prioritized. I really hope that we see like an open source release of this or something right now. Right now, I think if there is some sort of exodus from TikTok and everyone goes to loops, I think that that would be actually a pretty bad scenario because it's really centralizing on this central flagship instance that they have, just like how a lot of people signed up for Mastodon.social, which I think is bad for the ecosystem overall. And I think it's unfortunate that you can't really run your own loops right now, and there can't be other service providers that offer this. Because I think a lot of the people who run Mastodon instances like infosec.exchange or other ones like that would be open to running a loops instance as well and kind of spreading that load and making sure there are these smaller communities, and that just isn't really a thing that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and also I think the issue with at least we're seeing this a little bit with PeerTube is it's kind of expensive to run this sort
Yeah.
of like video hosting platform. Like I'm sure like every video that we upload to PeerTube, you know, that's a solid chunk of storage and bandwidth to actually send that out to people. And compared to Mastodon or like Pleroma or any of these like smaller microblogging services, the disk space, the bandwidth, it's nowhere near that of like a video hosting service. And we kind of saw that with like YouTube. They were for a very long time, they were like not making money because it costs a lot of money to serve video. It costs a lot of money to allow people to just like upload, in a lot of cases, garbage to your platform, and you kind of just have to allow people to do that. It's part of the platform. And I think the main issue with loops is the reason why TikTok is so great is that there's just so much content on there. And, you know, when you
Mhm.
swipe, you're basically seeing a new thing every time. But as far as I'm aware, the problem with loops, at least from a platform's perspective, is there just isn't enough content. And it's that's sort of the issue with I guess smaller platforms is, especially when it comes to like video content, like it sort of decides whether to show you something or not. It's kind of hard to have it show you the right thing or something that you would be interested in if there's not really any content there. Um, which makes
Yeah,
it tricky to
it's really
recommend.
hard. I mean, I think I just think YouTube is so underappreciated in general for what it is. Like, say what you will about Google and tracking and all this advertisements and stuff, but really there is not a single thing like YouTube. And TikTok is maybe trying to be and taking over some of this, but in terms of like just the wealth of knowledge and information you can find on YouTube, it is maybe the largest by far single source of information for anything on the internet. And it's insanely it has to be insanely expensive to operate. And like you said, video hosting is challenging and it's not something that's easily replicated. I think it'll be the hardest thing to decentralize in the future just because of everything you were saying. So YouTube, I think it's a bad rap at times because there's just nothing there's nothing like it out there. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think like that is true. Like people say a lot of bad stuff about YouTube, but like yeah, there's really no alternative, which is an issue in itself, but also like I don't think there's really anyone else who could do the same thing that YouTube's doing. Like so many platforms have tried
Yeah.
and they've all failed. Um, so it feels like we're kind of in a bit of a situation where Google can basically do whatever they want to the platform and everyone's just going to put up with it because there's no other alternative, which is a bit of a problem. Um, it would be good to see like an alternative. Like I guess you could say TikTok is sort of an alternative. It's like a video hosting platform, but like it's not the same. It's short form content focused.
Yeah, and there's not really a focus on monetization. I think like I've talked about this in even other shows on YouTube, but um like just video production in general, it's expensive. It's far more expensive than writing, for example, which is why you can see so many blogs. But video creation and vlogging and all of this sort of content didn't take off until YouTube entered the scene and said, not only can we host this video for free and get it out there, but we can pay you for it and people can build these businesses around it. And on TikTok, I think it benefits from the fact that there's no expectation of quality, and people could just upload it, and I don't think the vast majority of TikTok creators, I really don't think are getting paid for it. They just want to get that out there. And it's a really different vibe than on YouTube. But the downside of that is you don't see a lot of the higher quality content on TikTok. You're just going to see people's opinions. It's basically like Twitter in video form, right? It's a good place to get all of these people's opinions out there, and I think it is a good service to have. Um, but it's not replacing, like, a subscription to a newspaper or a newsletter or, like, actual news sources with people who are spending full time reporting on stuff and getting the news out there. Like, they're supplementary, and TikTok is certainly doing one side of this, but I think YouTube is doing a very important, job on the other side of the video production thing where they can actually support massive media businesses making videos, and getting paid for that work, which we don't really see on TikTok and we don't really see on any other platform at all. It's really hard to get paid for your work if you're a creator on the internet outside of YouTube. I think no matter what you're making, because video is kind of the place right now, and YouTube's the only person is the only company that's paying people for it.
Yeah, it does feel like what happens a lot of times is someone will like make it big on TikTok and then they'll just start a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
It's like sort of a promotion platform where like you can get your brand in front of a lot of people, but it's not really like a sustainable um platform for people to, I guess, make a living on. Yeah, I feel like that's we've kind of talked about that for a while. The last question here is from Anonymous 437. What reverse proxy would you recommend for someone getting into self-hosting? I feel like Jonah probably has some opinions about this.
I do have an opinion. The answer is Caddy. I wouldn't use anything else. You should use that. It is the
Well,
best one.
Jonah's spoken, so there you go. That's what you're gonna use. Yeah, I don't really have too many opinions on this. I've tried Caddy before and it was very like easy to use. But I know another one people really like is Nginx Reverse Proxy Manager. That's like a pretty popular one, which has got like a
Yeah, I think
GUI and
from like
everything.
a I have seen people I've tried to use that once and it didn't work for me, so I stopped using it. But I have heard people use it. I think if you want a GUI, it could be an option. But I mean, with Caddy, the advantage of it over Nginx is that you don't really need that GUI in the first place. Because the dual reverse proxy, we run so many reverse proxies for all the stuff that we run at Privacy Guides and all the stuff that I run personally. It's literally like two lines. You write your domain name and then you write reverse proxy where you want it to go. And that's all you have to do in Caddy because everything, like all of the defaults in Caddy are correct, unlike in Nginx where you have to configure everything to be correct. So you just don't have to worry about it. And so if you're getting into self-hosting, that is the way to go in my opinion. And I've switched everything that I use over to it for that reason.
Nice, yeah. Um, Definitely seems like the best option for new people. I can't actually, I don't know what's going on, but I can't see the YouTube chat. So if anyone's left any questions, I can't see that. So,
Yeah, I haven't seen any chats this time around for whatever reason.
hmm.
Usually it's a bit busier, but people are not really around. I saw on Twitter we saw one chat. It's just someone saying hello. So hi. But other than that, I haven't seen a lot of questions. So I think if we don't see anything else on the forum, we can probably wrap up this show. Kind of tying into what we were saying about YouTube earlier being the only place where it's easy for independent creators to get paid. I think we are very lucky to have launched our own membership program. So I'll kind of reiterate that if you want to support all of our work, and you don't want us to have to rely on YouTube and other sources like that for paying for that. We're not making any money on YouTube right now, but some of our revenue in the future may come from that, but the vast majority of our stuff is paid for by donations and members. So if you want to support our work, please consider becoming a member. We will have a lot of members only benefits. There's a whole post on our forum about all the stuff that we're doing or will be doing, and we want to hear from you about how we can improve that service to make it valuable for you. But right now, if you go to our website, you can become a member and support us monthly or yearly. You can also leave us a one-time donation, and that is hugely appreciated as well. We're a nonprofit, and we use all of this stuff to improve the resources that we're putting out, to pay people to make new and exciting forms of content, like getting all of this stuff on video that Jordan's been doing throughout this 2025. And like I said earlier, we want to continue this. We want to continue growing because it has made a huge impact on privacy guides. We've got so many more people involved, and people reading the website, and people watching these videos, and it's all good stuff. And that is all possible thanks to our members. I'll To wrap this up, the show, all of the updates that we talked about here, we're going to be sharing them on our website and in an email newsletter that'll be coming out shortly after this comes out. So you can subscribe with email or RSS if you want to see the sources for this. If you prefer audio, we are also publishing this as a podcast again. So there is information about how to access that on our website. You can get subscribed and listen to this in audio format. You can get notifications of new episodes in your podcast client shortly after these live streams end. So we just have to uh, get the audio out of this and upload it, and then you will get a notification there. So hopefully, for people who enjoy that format, now that we've restarted that, you can definitely get subscribed, and we will do that going forward. Otherwise, we will be here again at the same time next week, live streaming on our YouTube channel. So, yeah, definitely stop in. If you have a question for us, you can leave it on our forum or ask it in the chat, and we'll get them answered in the next Q&A. But I hope, despite the technical difficulties of this episode, you stuck around and learned some stuff, and it was a good episode for you. Um, yeah, so thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you next week on the channel. Bye, everyone.
Bye.